You don't have to destroy a city to see it in ruins, or have supernatural powers to shoot mist from a wand, or travel to neighboring planets to see aliens. So how do filmmakers do it? They have this ability, and it is one of Hollywood's best kept secrets.
My name is Scott Shaw, chair of the Game Design Development Program and Video Motion Graphics Program here at Wilmington University. Compositing. Well, in our world, that means taking several different images, maybe video footage, computer-generated objects such as creatures or buildings, and putting them all together into a finished piece where it doesn't look like it was staged.
Sometimes the goal for compositing is photorealism for a motion picture, and other times the goal is to exaggerate the world for a TV spot. Compositing's elements can be explained through an acronym called PERFECT, which special effects editor and your camera came up with. PERFECT stands for Perspective, Aesthetics, Randomize, Feathering, Environment, Color, and Timing. Perspective. When compositing a scene, a person would want to consider the illusion of depth in their raw footage and carefully mix elements that align with their shot.
Well, if your perspective is off, even in some of your 3D objects that you're creating, the viewer will know. It'll be like, I don't know what it is about this particular scene, but it just didn't feel right. I didn't think it was real. It looked fake or cheesy, and that's usually a result of not having your perspective lined up, or your lighting not right, or the grain.
For example, in a forest, trees are not just in one line across the ground. They must overlap each other, and the trees in the background must be blurrier than the ones in the foreground. Aesthetics. Keep an eye on each element and balance them in the scene evenly. Objects in the front of the scene should be more bright and in focus than the objects behind it. Look at the composite as a whole and not just the area being developed. Randomize. The world is unpredictable, so variation should be used in the compositing work. One example is when creating a dance team from a small group of extras, it is important to offset the individuals by time and depth so they do not look duplicated. The audience's mind should not pick up on a pattern. Feathering. The way elements are blended in a scene is a top priority. Sharp features can be a dead giveaway that the object was inserted into the scene in post-production. Edges must be feathered in order to blend and create an illusion of shadows. The audience does not want to notice the elements as individuals.
My name is Brian Windle, and I'm a videographer and editor at OK Video. Generally, when I see special effects and stuff in movies, I don't really want to notice them happening. So if special effects are done using composites and 3D imaging and stuff like that, if it's done well enough and the story is told well enough to make me not notice that type of thing going on, then I don't mind it. What the worst thing though is when you're watching a movie and you're getting distracted by seeing some things where you're noticing the effect and maybe they didn't spend enough time on it or something like that. And in that case, sometimes it's just great to just have it, shot the way it's going to be, if it's possible. Certain things, of course, it's not possible to do that.
Environment. When compositing an element for a scene, think about how light would naturally affect the surrounding environment. Does bright light cast or glow on the walls around it? Does the curtain in front of the window diffuse the light seeping onto the floor? Be creative and think of clever ways to make the effects blend with the real world. Color. Matching color and light are important to realistic-looking composites. Obviously, the elements should match the color of the scene, but the contrast levels should look real too. The audience does not want to see a blue-tinted person in a red, warm environment.
Vincent H. Shelley, I'm the Director of Technology here for the Mass Communications Department at Delaware State University. It depends on your value, on what you're valuing, what you want your end product to look like. I mean, it's very easy using something like Media Composer and Premiere to take a image that may have been shot properly or not shot properly and increase the chroma gain. And when you increase the chroma gain, it just looks brilliantly colorful. Could be 10 times more than the eye actually saw.
Timing. There is a rhythm to cinema and visual effects. There is action and reaction. Allow the composite to flow and unfold as if it was real. That's what the audience wants after all. If one forces things to happen a short amount of time, the shot may turn out choppy and fake. The audience wants to see realism, not falsely edited pieces.
See, if you have your actor kind of responding or reacting to a creature that, takes a bite at them, and they don't react when you have the bite happen, it's kind of like, chomp, and then it's not going to sell the scene. It's not believable.
Chroma keying is a technique used for combining two frames or images by replacing a color or a color range in one frame with that from another frame. The concept might sound simple, but it is more complex than that. The principle behind chroma keying is that the color blue is the opposite color of skin tone, so a distinction between the two is very clear, making it easier to select the color without worrying about any part of the actor being included in the selection. Physical composition is created when the separate parts of the image are placed together in the photographic frame and recorded in a single exposure.
Well, certainly how sophisticated post-production effects are, I think they would prefer post-production effects. I think that it's getting to the point where you got so many gamers who are used to seeing that look, that computer-generated look on the games, that when you present them something in real life, they think, it doesn't look as good as it does on my gaming console. So, overall, I think people are getting to a point where they're preferring the absolute crystal clear visuals.
The elements are aligned so that they give the appearance of a single image. Physical composition can look more realistic, but if not done carefully, can look fake. Compositing has drastically improved since 1898, when George Miley started the first composite. The matte shot was the first compositing techniques employed by early filmmakers such as Miley's. In his film, Miley's would black out parts of the frame using a piece of glass with some black paint. No light would reach that part, and therefore it would not be exposed. Then the film would be rewound and matted out all that was previously exposed. The resulting double exposure could combine two or more different shots into one frame, all done inside the camera. In 1903, Edwin S. Porter needed to get a train moving outside the window of a train station in his movie, The Great Train Robbery. A pane of glass was painted and added to the front of the camera to create a larger, more realistic world. Using this painted glass, the window and the train outside appeared to actually exist in the scene. Early orthochromatic film needed a lot of light, and the technology for efficient electrical lighting for film was still a decade or two away. In the 1900s and 1910s, painted glass was often used to make sets look bigger and more elaborate without the cost of construction. The traveling matte was patented by Frank Williams in 1918. Subjects were photographed against a pure black background. A black and white silhouette would emerge after the film was copied, to increasingly high contrast negatives. With painted glass, any shadows casted off of the subjects would be lost. An alternative to traveling mattes emerged in about 1925. This alternative would eventually be called the Dunning process, named after its inventor, C. Dodge Dunning. The Dunning process required a blue background screen and the subject lighted yellow. Using dyes and filters, the blue and yellow light could be split across to create traveling mattes. The drawback with the dunning process was that it only worked with black and white film. Once color film came on the scene, the dunning process faded away as color became more prominent. The 3-strip Technicolor process recorded 3 colors separately, red, green, and blue, and displayed them back onto one larger combined color. This was done by shooting a subject on a blue background. Blue was the furthest thing away from skin tones and had the smallest grain of its time. The silhouette matte was created when the blue separated from 3 Technicolor negatives. The 3-strip Technicolor process involved too many steps and was time-consuming. A thin blue line was also visible and the lines were keyed out. In the 50s through the 70s, the sodium vapor process was new and advanced for its time. Actors, lit normally, stood in front of a well-lit white screen. An old 3-strip Technicolor camera captured black and white, which created its own traveling matte. The only sodium vapor prism camera ever made was owned by Disney, who would not share their technology for cheap. We now use green screens because green is easier and cheaper to light than its relative blue, and it also registers brighter on electronic displays, and is less common on costumes than blue is. Modern digital cameras are much more sensitive to the green part of the color spectrum, making green screening more effective. Blue is still used, but it is less common. Although computing software is most commonly used for compositing, there are already basic compositing applications for phones, such as Juxtapose. For just $2.99, iPhone users can create multiple layers and combine them into one image. Cynics today believe that we should return to a simpler form of filmmaking, but films have been complex since the beginning. Special effects were used at the very beginning of filmmaking industry, although simple by today's standards. As tools and technology have improved, so have the end results. While painted glass used to amaze audiences, it is by today's standard an antiquated tool. Compositing has evolved from environments created by hand to worlds created through a click of a mouse. No one knows for sure what the future will bring, but the advances in compositing are sure to keep the audience amazed for years to come.